Hey guys, Woods Farm here, just back out working on the Kubelwagen. Hope everyone out there is doing okay with the COVID-19 outbreak. Everyone here, my family's doing okay right now. We're kind of self-isolating on the farm, which is pretty easy to do. And we're just trying to keep our spirits up. I got a little bit of free time. So I'm going to work on the Kubel today, just do some odds and ends. It is going to be difficult during this situation. I'm going to have some problems maybe getting some materials, but obviously there's mail order. So I should be able to keep working, just maybe at a slightly slower pace. Since the last video, actually during the last video, I ended up getting the windshield sorted out. I didn't include it in the video because it was just kind of long and boring, but what I ended up doing is I just used some adhesive sealant to put the windshield in place. Good enough for now. And another update, I've had this out a number of times up and down the road, and everything so far so good with the rear suspension. With the lift seems to be running just fine, so that's a good thing. So here's my work list, and you can see I've got quite a few things done, but still have a lot of stuff to do before I get a safety. Got to come up with some sort of a windshield wiper setup. The seat belts, that's really easy to do. They're just bolt in. I need that for the safety. Really right now the major issue that's holding me back from the safety is the brake issue. I did another round of adjustments and rebled the brakes with only a minor improvement. You know, it's okay to drive it around in the field, but it's by no means safe enough to go on the road. You know, right now, if I'm like doing, you know, second or third gear, maybe doing, you know, 20, 30 kilometers, you know, it takes 20, 30 feet to stop, maybe more. So got to work on this brake issue and get that sorted out. At this point, I've just been around in circles so many times. I'm thinking about going ahead and getting a new master cylinder. Maybe the one which was brand new out of the box. Maybe it was faulty. I don't know. So been working with the tune-up as well, and I'm sort of getting the carburetor dialed in. I think my spark plug fouling issues at least somewhat improved, so that's a good thing. But some of the other little projects I want to do, I got to get the rear skid plate sorted out, some sort of a way to mount the front license plate, and then the big thing right now is the canopy frame and the canvas cover. Of course I don't need that for a safety, but I really want to try to get that ready and finished for this summer. Especially if I'm going to be taking it out and about and going to car shows and reenactments and such. So I've talked about this before, but I'm going to be using the framework from the 181 Thing and adapting that to this vehicle. It's going to work because the width is obviously the same. Now there are some dimensional issues with the length and how it sets up. In an effort to get it to fold back far enough, let me just zoom out here, get rid of these gloves here. It needs to fold far enough back, but not too far, in the sense that when it's folded up, it rests kind of in this area and doesn't obstruct the hatch, the trunk lid. Now, I could move it further forward, but that, if you go any further forward really than this point, what happens is this trunk hatch gets obstructed. Not the end of the world, but really you want to be able to access this, especially with the cover folded down. It's going to be in the down position 95% of the time. So I'm going to have to make a little bit of a compromise, because on a Kubelwagen, the pivot point is right here at the door pillar. And then it angles up this way. So there's going to be a little bit of a gap here. The angle will start going up, and I actually think I might be able to make the fabric portion actually come up here to this point and come up, and it'll somewhat replicate the look. And I'm not sure if I have to slightly shorten it or extend it, but it needs to marry up with this part of the windshield, and I'll have to fabricate some sort of a clip system. And also there's a locating pin on each side, so when you fold it over, that locating pin gets it in the correct orientation, and then there's a locking clip that holds it in place. So just with some scrap materials today, I'm just going to work on this pivot point. This was just a quick mock-up, but it needs to be reinforced, made a little stronger. So I'm going to work on that right now. Just to update you on another little thing I got done since the last video. I've got the shovel carrier in place. It was really tricky. It took a lot of work to get this clip to work right, but it is functional. Does what it needs to do. Just kind of the engineering of how this pivot point worked was a little difficult. Took a lot of trial and error, but pretty happy with the way it looks. I don't know if you can see that, but as it sits, it's a little high, and it's also too narrow. Now I thought about just stretching it out at the front, but what happens is it's tapered in. That back support tapers in ever so slightly. Now that originally on a thing, the windshield, on a Kubel it's kind of it's straight up. On a thing it tapers in on an angle, so the top of the windshield is narrower than the bottom, and this canopy is set up to match that. So looking at what I got to do here, the other issue is that it's sitting on an angle, and it's a little too high at the front. Now I can correct that by extending these straps, and it'll pivot forward. So I'm going to do that, and it's going to be a combination between that and then this pivot point. This is just my original trial. I'm actually going to cut this material, cut about 3/4 of an inch here, and lower this 3/4 to an inch down, and it should drop it down at the back a little bit. And then a combination between that and extending this strap should drop it down enough to match up with the leading edge of the windshield. Now if I'm a little high, if I'm 1/2 inch high, that's okay, because there's going to be a lip that's going to get built into this. It doesn't have to be exactly lined up with this. I can work around that. But mostly it's just, if you stand back and you look at it, it's angled up. I want to level it out for the most part. I think just leveling it out. I think it's roughly 17 inches at the back, and right up at the front it's more like 18.5, 19. So I just want to kind of get it level so it matches that line, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I widened the canopy by 3 inches so it'll match up with the front, and a side effect of that is that this mounting point now wants to be on the outside edge as opposed to the inside edge. So I don't know if I'm going to rebuild that bracket or just leave the washers in there. It articulates just fine the way it is, and I've got a strap leaning forward, and unfortunately there's a slight discrepancy. The length of this beam here, it's equal on both sides, but I'm out by about 7/8 on the driver's side. I don't know if that's got something to do with the windshield. I took a bunch of measurements, and I think the windshield is just sitting kind of crooked a little bit. Just trying to figure out ways to correct that, maybe adjusting this hinge, but I think ultimately the easiest thing to do is to extend this rail on the other side and just it's not going to be perfectly square, but that's the simplest way to deal with the problem. Now I've got 17 inches from the top of the door up, and that's pretty much uniform on both sides, so that's good. So now I just need to come up with a way to engineer how this is going to marry up with the top edge of the windshield. Once I figure that out, there's really not much more to it. All that needs to happen is these straps need to get lengthened. That added length will allow it to sit level. That top rail needs to sit basically level. I've just got a temporary strap here in the middle that I can adjust, and I'm just playing with the height, or sorry, the length of this strap, just to get the canopy to sit where it needs to be. Okay, so here's an issue I just noticed. A couple weeks ago I noticed a small little drip. Thought it might have been moisture, but then I realized it was kind of some seepage coming out of the master cylinder, and it's just gotten worse and worse, to the point now that the car's been sitting here for about a week and a half, and there's a pretty good puddle. So the good news about this is I was on the fence about replacing the master cylinder as a way to try to solve my brake issues. If you've been watching some of the other videos, I've talked about the brakes and how I just can't get them to produce enough stopping power. No matter how much I bleed the system, it just feels like, you know, the brake pedal is squishy, and there's just no stopping power there. So now that the master cylinder is leaking, it's a good excuse to replace it, and hopefully that solves my brake problem. I've got one on order from CIP1. Should be here next week, so I'm going to make that my priority. I haven't got much more work done on the canopy, but I will tinker on it. I did pick up some canvas. This is just basically painter's drop cloth, and I am going to use this to pattern the actual canvas top once I get the structure built and figured out. If this turns out to be good enough, I might actually keep it for a while, dye it brown, and keep it temporarily, but eventually I'll just use it as a pattern. I did also pick up some oil. I need to do an oil change. The oil was pretty good for a while there, but the last time I cleaned the carburetor, because the float bowl was sticking, I cleaned the carburetor and everything got out of whack after that. And what ended up happening is I was having all kinds of problems with the spark plugs fouling up, and it took me a while to realize that it probably was because I was running way too rich. There was a lot of black smoke coming out of the tailpipe, that really nasty kind of fuel smell, and it took me a while, but I think now I have the carburetor dialed in. So the oil kind of blackened really quick, so I'm going to replace it with some fresh oil. That's another thing I want to work on. I have had the car out quite a bit, driving up and down the road, so it's running good now. Just the last few little things I have to work out. Like I said, the brakes, I need a set of seat belts in, and I got to get some sort of a windshield wiper, and then I should be able to get it insured and safetied and plated and on the road. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyways, definitely leave a comment below, a like, subscribe if this is your first time to the channel. Appreciate everyone watching. I know a lot of people have a lot of extra time now, so definitely go back and check out some of the other Kubelwagen videos if this is your the first time to the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.